Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in Whitehorse, where Gladiator Metals now has a permit to drill for copper within city limits. The mining exploration company has been given the green light from the city. Over the next few months, the company will be drilling over a 30-hectare area. Mike Gow is with the city of Whitehorse. He says they've taken steps to ensure the drilling won't impact nearby neighborhoods or the environment.
We've attached a number of conditions to address concerns and the technical issues regarding such activity. Included with that are conditions such as storage of hydrocarbons. There won't be any storage of hydrocarbons at the site. There's no chemicals planned to be used in this activity. And the noise is going to be monitored and mitigated as required.
Gao says the proposed activity will use existing trails and roads. He says there won't be any clearing and the vegetation will stay intact. The city hasn't released the official start date for the work. Gladiator says it will be sharing regular updates with the public. The city of Iqaluit got a boost towards its housing action plan. On Friday, the federal government announced almost $9 million to help with the barriers of building new units in the capital. The CBC's Nick Murray has the details.
We're happy with what we got. It's pretty much what we were asking for, yeah.
Iqaluit City Planner Matthew Dodds says the money will go toward helping remove barriers to building units around town, like reducing parking requirements and increasing building heights. Dodds says the city has policies in place which may no longer be applicable. For example, new buildings in Iqaluit need one parking space per unit along with visitor parking, but Dodds says policies like that may not make sense anymore, particularly for public housing and below-market rental units.
Over the last 10 years, the need for parking stalls might be less than we thought it was when we originally created parking policies in the zoning bylaw. And so part of this funding will go towards, will be allocated towards conducting a parking study to see how much parking we're actually using.
We want to make it easier to build homes. We want to eliminate steps in the process.
Federal Housing Minister Sean Fraser said the $8.9 million is from the government's Housing Accelerator Fund. It's not meant to fund the cost of construction, but rather make it easier for developers to build.
The strength of the Housing Accelerator Fund is that it creates an incentive for municipalities to increase their ambition and to implement different kinds of zoning reforms.
Now, Iqaluit's Housing Action Plan calls for the building of 1,400 new units by 2032. Friday's funding announcement will fast-track the building of 160 units. Nick Murray, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Twin sisters charged with fraud for claiming Inuit status were scheduled to appear in Iqaluit court this morning, but the date was pushed again for another month while lawyers continue discussions. Amira and Nadia Gill are facing fraud charges over $5,000 for claiming Inuit status under Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated. So is Karima Manji. She claims to be their adoptive mother. NTI removed the Gills from its enrollment list last year. The twins allegedly used Inuit status to defraud the Kikavik Association and the Kakatani Inuit Association of money available only to Inuit beneficiaries. The three women are scheduled to appear in court on February 5th. Parents and caregivers in the Beaufort Delta are upset about the makeup of a hockey team heading to the Arctic Winter Games in March. They say players from their region aren't being given a fair chance. The CBC's Luke Carroll has been speaking to people about this, and he joins me now with more. So, Luke, I understand there's one team in particular that's frustrating for parents and guardians.
Yeah, that's right. It's the U18 male team, Megan. So it's made up of almost all players from Yellowknife, as well as one from Fort Smith and two from Hay River. So no representation from their region. And I spoke to a number of caregivers that flagged this as a big issue, including Kawanak and Beverly Amos. Their grandson Lennox plays hockey in Inuvik. He tried out for this team and didn't make it, though he is listed as an alternate. It's worth noting that other NWT hockey teams do have some players competing from the Beaufort Delta, including the U19 female team and the U15 male team. But in all, there are only 3 players total from the Beaufort Delta in hockey, and there's none on the team that are from the Sawtoo, Cleacho, or Decho.
Sports North Federation, Hockey NWT, They talk equity and inclusion, but we don't see it. It hasn't been in. They haven't followed their statement.
How are teams selected, Luke?
Yeah, so I spoke with Thor Goal, who is he's a board of director with Hockey NWT, and he says they bring in 5 evaluators from British Columbia and Alberta who work in hockey operations with a focus on player development. So this is to ensure impartiality and avoid conflicts of interest. So Goal says these evaluators rate the athletes, provide comments during the training sessions and games. They provide guidance to the coaches to help select the teams. So Goal says if a decision was made to add a player who was not recommended by these evaluators, the coaches would need to provide a valid explanation.
So what are some of the explanations around why these teams are so overwhelmingly made up of Yellowknife players?
So I spoke with Christopher Grumman. He's the president of Inuvik Minor Hockey and the representative for Beaufort Delta for Hockey North. And an issue he flagged was kind of the resource gap, particularly when it comes to infrastructure between Yellowknife and other communities.
You know, you've got some of the smaller communities that don't have ice time until a week or two before tryouts, as opposed to some of the youth from the more southern communities who are able to access ice year-round. That makes a huge impact in their ability to perform when time comes as well too. Is that ideal? No.
So Grubin said there are also less coaches and volunteers to draw on, but he said this has been an issue for a while. It's one he faced when he competed in sports. So parents and caregivers of kids in the Beaufort Delta who tried out in past tournaments, they also told me this. And when I looked at the past rosters, many looked similar to this year.
Who is then ultimately responsible for developing sports in the communities?
So there's a variety, but there's Sport North, which is a non-government organization that relies on territorial funding to assist territorial sports organizations, or TSOs. So I spoke with Rita Mercredi, who's a sport consultant with Sport North and is the chef de mission for the upcoming AWG. She says they do have funding programs to help territorial sports organizations offer programs, including in communities, to try and build, capacity amongst the coaches and athletes. But she also acknowledges that lack of infrastructure is a real barrier.
I think it's important that we understand and that we know that there is inequities and that we know that there are barriers in the community. It is never our intention, nor do I believe it's any TSO's intention, to not select athletes from the communities. We are striving and working towards as much as possible to ensure that selection process with each TSO is fair and equitable across the board, and we review it all the time.
Amos and Quannock say that it's on these sports organizations to address this issue, and until they see a more representative team, the work needs to continue. Megan.
Thanks for all your work on this, Luke.
Thanks, Megan.
The Arctic Winter Games are officially headed to Whitehorse in 2026. The hosting agreement between the City of Whitehorse, the AWG International Committee, and the host society was signed today. That means planning the games can now officially begin. The agreement details how the event should be organized. That includes funding, legacy initiatives, activities, and the opening and closing ceremonies. A launch event is now in the works for people who want to be involved in shaping the games. Inspectors are starting to check out Boeing's fleet of 737 MAX 9s. One of the planes had a crash landing in Oregon on Friday after a panel detached mid-air. Sasha Petrusik has the latest on the investigation.
Boeing 737 MAX 9 jets remain grounded worldwide for inspection, with reports that United has already found loose bolts in some of its planes. This as U.S. Transportation Safety Board experts continue to investigate the flight whose mishap set off alarm bells. Their job became easier as a Portland, Oregon teacher named Bob discovered the fallen piece of the Alaska Airlines jet in his backyard.
I'm excited to announce that we found the door plug. Woo! Thank you, Bob.
The NTSB is also collecting passenger cell phones which dropped to Earth, as well as other fragments.
Our focus right now is on this aircraft to determine what happened, how it happened, and to prevent it from happening again.
We declared an emergency.
The Alaska Airlines flight was on its way from Portland to California when the panel blew off shortly after takeoff, with passengers calling it a trip from hell.
The sound was very loud. For it to suck the guy's T-shirt off and take his phone off his hand, I've seen it in the movies, but this is real.
The low altitude prevented serious injuries and the plane landed safely. But it's not the first time Boeing 737 jets have been grounded. 2 deadly crashes of an earlier version kept the planes out of the skies for more than a year. This incident raises more questions about rushed production.
Boeing seems to me to have a systemic problem with quality control. They're turning out 38 MAXs a month. Think about that. One of these giant airplanes is coming off the assembly line every single day.
Boeing's only comment about the latest incident is a post online that it agrees with and fully supports the mandatory inspections of all 171 of its planes. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
A partial price tag was released today for extreme weather damage in Canada from last year. Insurance companies paid out more than $3 billion because of storms, floods, and fires. As David Thurton reports, Canada has become a country risky to insure.
It's been a rough year for many Canadian homeowners.
The level of the water was about 1 meter inside of the home. So my home was destroyed.
The spring flooding in Quebec's Charlevoix region was one weather story among many. You name it, 2023 saw it.
Oh my God!
Tornadoes, pelting hail, and of course, devastating wildfires.
This was a pretty intense year, as Canadians know.
New numbers from the Insurance Bureau of Canada show for the second year in a row, Canada exceeded $3 billion in insured damage from severe weather. The costliest, BC's Okanagan-Shuswap wildfires, coming in at $720 million in insured losses, followed by Ontario's severe summer storms at $340 million. Then the spring ice storm that hit Ontario and Quebec at $330 million. It's becoming an annual trend, earning Canada a reputation for being an expensive place to insure.
What these numbers mean is that when insurers globally take a look at Canada, they view Canada as one of the riskier places in the world to insure and to do business.
This researcher says governments, businesses, and Canadians must make neighborhoods and homes more resistant to floods, wildfires, and storms.
And that's why we keep talking about climate adaptation, for example, so adapting our communities, our homes, so that insurance companies don't have to pull out of insuring our homes.
Pinochet says he couldn't get flood insurance.
I accept what happened, and I'm going to try to do my best to be happy in my new place and continue to make my work.
His house had to be demoed, and he was forced to walk away from the place he called home for 26 years. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
A new study takes a look at the severely destructive impact of logging on Canada's boreal forest. It's been championed in the past as a key in the fight against climate change. But as trees continue to disappear, experts say the forest is losing its ability to support life and is more likely to catch fire. Sarah Levitt reports.
We worked a lot in what's called the Gordon Cousins.
Jay Malcolm has devoted decades of his career to Canada's boreal forest. Vast expanses that stretch across the country. Home to an ecosystem brimming with biodiversity, including the threatened woodland caribou. Land, Malcolm and his fellow researchers say, is under threat.
We have been cutting the heck out of the boreal forest. It was startling for sure to see how little is left and how badly fragmented it is.
His study looked at the impact of logging on boreal forest in Quebec and Ontario. It's faced decades of clear cutting. 14 million hectares harvested since 1976, including old-growth forest critical for caribou to survive.
Lichen grows in old forests, and lichen is a primary food source for caribou. When a forest is clear-cut, new browse grows back, and that new browse attracts moose and deer, which in turn attracts more predators like wolves, and those wolves end up preying on more caribou.
Researchers looked at 21 remaining herds across the forest. They found 15 were at high risk of disappearing, another 4 at very high risk.
We have a tendency as a Western culture to want to maximize our economic opportunities when we engage with natural resources. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're fully being cognizant of the risk. What this study speaks to is that there is risk.
Both Ontario and Quebec have been told by the federal government they are failing to properly protect caribou.
This paper shows that our logging practices are not in fact sustainable. What caribou need is to have the habitat that they depend upon protected, and where it's already been degraded, to have it restored.
Necessary measures, experts say, if we want to see not only caribou survive, but the ecosystem of our boreal forest as well. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here
shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job?
Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
That same woman from the SEC keeps calling. Can I give her your number?
No.
Michael Lazaridis, want to come and answer some questions?
Why is the SEC looking at us?
I'm sure it's nothing. Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you convinced all these engineers from around the world to come all the way to Canada. Do you know what the sentence is for multi-million-dollar stock fraud?
It doesn't matter how full of people your house is as long as it's full of love. Now, today is not about the future. It's not about the past. It's about this moment.
You can't go halfway with Swan Lake.
There's a lot of stress. I love ballet, and sometimes it feels like it doesn't love me back.
The stakes become very high.
We're just trying to survive right now.
Some people rise and some people don't.
The Great Canadian Baking Show is back.
And the winner is...
Alan, no, it's too soon for that.
How about now?
Give me that.
Okay, yeah, sure.
The oldest newspaper in the Yukon is looking for a refresh. The Whitehorse Star is in the process of creating a new business strategy, and it wants Yukoners to weigh in on how the paper can increase readership, revenue, and content. Mike Rudick has that story.
The Whitehorse Star. It hasn't missed an edition in 124 years. But times have changed, and now the paper wants more subscribers. Max Fraser is a former reporter and editor for the paper. He says he has been getting a lot of feedback.
In conversations I've had with people in town, they really value and cherish the Whitehorse Star. It's been publishing for 124 years, which is amazing. And the other thing is it's independently owned. It's locally owned. It's not owned by a chain. And every dollar spent on the Star stays in this community. It's a remarkable thing. It's a rare thing in Canada these days.
Michelle Pierce is the co-owner of the Whitehorse Star. She says it's important for the paper to remain independent.
We've been serving this community for 124 years. We are a small local business, but we're still here for the community every day.
The paper hopes that with public input and support, it can keep the presses running on one of the Yukon's lasting institutions well into the future. Mike Rudick, CBC News, Whitehorse.
An Enoch man, originally from Clyde River, is sharing country food with elders living in Ottawa. Benjamin Ilauk says he loves to keep traditions alive by sharing country food. He says the food feeds about 50 to 60 people, and he says the elders love it.
They get all happy and they start telling stories amongst one another, and you can just see the history starting to unfold.
Ilauk says his group provides food from Eastern Baffin. They've been paying for it themselves for over a year now, but he says they're finally getting help from others. In Labrador, an old Christmas Day custom is still going strong. Naliuk Night marks the start of a new year with a scare. The CBC's Heidi Adder has more on how the Moravian and Inuit tradition was celebrated this weekend.
They're starting the year off with a fright. Hunch masked figures in fur coats there to ensure children are well behaved, but they can be appeased with a song. About 100 people came to catch a glimpse of the Naliwit at the Moravian Church in Happy Valley Goose Bay Saturday, including young Callie. She was too shy to sing, but brought the Naliuk a treat.
We grew up with Naliuks in our tradition growing up with Naliuks, so I wanted her to see it to what I grew up with, and it's really important thing.
A tradition brought over by the Moravian Church in the 1700s, the Naliwit typically represent the three wise men who traveled far for the birth of Christ. But that's where the comparison ends. They're known to poke and chase children, only stopping when someone sings, and might whack you with a stick if you've been bad.
My name is Maddox Montague, and the Naliuks chased after me, and they tried to hit me, and it was so fun.
The four visitors brought bags of candy, and it wasn't just kids taking in the fun.
My mother told me about the Naliuks when I was a child, and this is my first time having a chance to come out and see them. It was quite thrilling, and I brought up my son and his friend, and they had a blast.
Naliwit visited almost every Nanatsiavut community, including Makovic, Nain, and Hopedale.
It seems like the tradition is still going on very strong, and I think it's going to continue for very much longer.
At the end of the night, the Naliwit performed a group dance before heading back from where they came. Gone at least for another year. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
Winter as we know it has finally returned to much of the north. It is cold out there. In Yellowknife, an extreme snap has been going strong for almost a week, and the temperatures are expected to plummet to -44 on Thursday night. Our Travis Burke braved the freezing weather today. He asked Yellowknifers what they think of the brutal conditions and how they stay prepared.
That was a real Christmas we had. Yeah, it was not even cold, but it was a nice weather. Everybody was out enjoying the weather. And now this week it's very cold and not much people out these days. Walk, keep moving. Keep your body moving, that way you stay warm. We wear my big gummicks and parka and a sweater underneath. Yeah.
We've had it so good for so long, and we knew this is going to come. And this whole cold air is coming, and you see it every day, so it's going to be with us for a while. But we've been very fortunate for December. We had a very mild winter, so I think we can bear that.
I like to layer up like wool socks, wool boot liners. I have these amazing mittens made in Delaney. I think they're the warmest mittens ever. Snow pants, coat, everything, yeah.
Oh, it's typical. It's 40 plus years of being here now, and this is what we see, the kind of weather we see. Before the new year, it was an anomaly, and now here we are with back to everything being normal, and everyone's happy.
So keep warm with your hands and your feet.
Yes, and take care of your face. You can some red.
Just going to businesses, warm up to businesses, and not to stay home, relax.
If you're covered, the weather is fun to walk in, actually. I find that there's a special ambience to the cold like that. There's a the air doesn't sound the same. Your ears sound different, and you see sometimes you'll have ice fog, and it's good. It's pretty in its own way, that extreme cold as we see.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, you can always go to our website, cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
We fought our way through Italy and then headed for Amsterdam, sweeping for Germans along the way. Our worst fear was to catch a bullet in these last hours of the war.
I was 15 when the Nazis invaded the Netherlands. More than 100,000 Dutch Jews never came home. Our men were put into forced labor. By 1945, we were starving. The food drops gave us hope. And then the Canadians came.
Before Amsterdam, I couldn't have explained why we were there, all those years away from home, but the Dutch showed us why it mattered.
Papa wanted me to bring some soldiers home to thank them personally. And that's when I first saw Wilf. And I invited him over that afternoon.
Marguerite Blaise married Lieutenant Wilf Gildersleeve. They moved to Vancouver, where they raised 8 children. Today, the Dutch still remember the Canadians who liberated them.
Her particular skill set can be helpful to us.
She's a con artist.
Instead of using your talents for crime, you'll be playing on our team.
I'm a cop. You're not a cop. You have a badge?
Not yet.
A gun?
Soon.
Not ever.
I need to get off that boat and back to being a full-time detective, and you need to stay out of prison. The best way we do that is to keep our heads down and do as we're told.
90,000.
90,000.
The department will cover it, right?
No, they won't.
Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
What's so? The holly makes it look Christmassy.
I'm making some magic happen.
Moment of truth.
It's working! Music. That's what always gives me a Christmas tingle. This is your future.
I'm in love.
I challenge you!
Everything ends in death.
Je m'appelle Brigitte. Je suis pas obéissante. Je suis piégée.
I was a grade 9.
Mr. Critch, you need glasses. Glasses? No, I just think the chalk is just a little soft.
One of these days, we're gonna have to grow up. But today is not that day.
I don't want us to get older either.
Son of a Critch. Watch free on CBC Gem.
We got a snake on the plane.
What?
Prepare for emergency landing.
Hang on, guys.
Alex liked them safe. Maybe you just haven't been taking the right risks. You might find your life dancing with danger.
Watch
Watch CBC News Explore 24 hours a day for free.